Hi everyone! Today we're making bagels. I mean, you really can't beat a nice bagel and a cup of coffee. I remember years ago a friend of mine visited New York, and on the way back she brought back freshly baked bagels from the bakeries back to London to me. And I still remember the taste of those bagels and how delicious they were even till this day. And I've fallen in love with bagels ever since. And what makes bagels so satisfying and delicious to eat, other than the variety of flavors you can add in there and the endless combination fillings, is the unapologetic, dense texture and the slight chewiness to the bread. And they made them so good to eat. So today I'm going to show you how to make the best keto vegan bagels. So follow me. The ingredients you need. So if you've been making my bread recipes in the past, you probably have pretty much all ingredients you need here. We're simply tweaking the ingredients to make it work for bagels. So base of our dough would be ground almonds or almond milk. And some of you might be asking whether you could use finer almond flour, like super fine or extra fine. And I'll say I don't recommend it, because the finer the flour is, the denser the bread would be. And we simply need that airiness in the dough. So definitely use ground almonds, or sometimes it's called almond milk. And then on top of that, we need some psyllium husk, and then some ground flaxseed. So this is golden flaxseed. You can just use the regular one, which is slightly darker. And on top of that, we're going to add some yeast in there. So this is instant yeast. So this is the type of yeast you can just add directly into the ingredients without needing activation. So we're not relying on the yeast to create the bread texture. So we're not trying to proof the dough, but it adds tremendous flavors to it. You know that bread flavor when you bake the bread? That's mostly coming from the yeast. So I highly recommend that you add some yeast in there. And also I'm going to add some sweetener in there. So this is optional to a certain extent, but I think it really makes a difference in the flavor because it kind of provides the natural sweetness coming from gluten. A little bit of sweetener really makes the difference. And then some baking powder. And also we need some oil for the dough and also for coating. So I'm using olive oil. You can use avocado oil or any oil you like. And then we'll need a little bit of vinegar. So you can use any type of white vinegar. So rice vinegar, fruit vinegar, I'm using apple cider vinegar. And also for toppings, I'm sticking with the classic and also my favorites, toasted sesames and some poppy seeds. I love poppy seeds. And this is it. This is all you need to create these beautiful bagels. Okay, so I've got my mixing bowl here. So before we make the dough, get the kettle ready. We need some hot water. So let's make the dough. So what I've got here is 250 grams of ground almonds or almond milk. Just pop that in. And then I'm going to add in 30 grams of psyllium husk powder. It's roughly just under half a cup. And then 2 tablespoons of ground flaxseed. Just pop that in. And then I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So 2 teaspoons that go in. And same thing for the sweetener. I'm going to add in 2 teaspoons. So a little bit of sweetness to make the dough taste really good. And on top of that, I'm going to add in a little bit of salt. So I've got really coarse sea salt here. So I'm going to add in about 1.5 teaspoons. If you're using finely ground salt, maybe under a teaspoon will do. So I love eating bagels plain, so I like to have a little bit more salt in there. And then with my yeast, so again, this is instant dry yeast. I'm going to add about a teaspoon. That should be plenty. So that's all our dry ingredients. And we're going to just quickly mix all the dry ingredients together with a spatula. You can sift the dry ingredients as well, but this is as far as I go. So give it a nice mix. And now I'm going to just make a little well here. Okay, so here comes the wet ingredients. So I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of olive oil in there. And now we're going to add in some hot liquid. So what I've got here is some freshly boiled hot water. And inside, I put in 2 teaspoons of vinegar and mix well. So I've got 2 cups here, but we definitely do not need a full 2 cups. So I'm going to add in a small amount at a time. I'm going to just scoop in half a cup to start with and just pour it over. So you can see a little bit of foaming up happening here, and that's the baking powder. So mix it in. So I've shown this process quite a few times in the past bread videos. So when it comes to liquid, be conservative. Be very, very conservative and add a small amount at a time. So We prepare 2 cups, but from my experience, most of the times I need probably just slightly over a cup. But don't take my word for it. You need to observe what happens to your dough and then decide for yourself. So with this dough, kneading is really required. If you have a mixer, it's your best friend right now. You can use a mixer to do the kneading for you. So continue to knead and add a small amount of liquid at a time. Not even a tablespoon, just a few drops at a time. So the success of this dough is all down to the amount of liquid and also kneading. It's really important. If you're kneading by hand like me, you simply need to spend a little bit of time with it. Okay, so I've spent probably about 10 minutes kneading it. So you can see that the dough is coming together quite nicely and the color is a lot paler. So that's because we add in liquid, but also a lot of air into it. So we're going to do something I called crack test. So basically grabbing a small amount of dough and then roll in your palms, and then we're going to check the texture. Okay, so look at this. So the texture should be quite smooth and not grainy, and it's moist and slightly sticky to touch, but not falling apart. So you can see that there's no crack. And I call it crack test because there shouldn't be any crack. So the key of this dough is to make sure you reach this texture. If the dough feels grainy or it feels really firm, then it needs a little bit more liquid and also some kneading to it. So don't be afraid to add a liquid, just be conservative. So the dough is looking good. And now I'm going to just roughly roll into a big dough ball. And then we're going to leave it to rest. So cover it with a moist towel and we're going to leave it to rest for about 20 minutes to half an hour. Okay, so this is my dough and it's been resting for about half an hour. And you can see the texture has become even smoother and expands a little bit, but not much. But it's just lovely and moist. Now we're ready to turn them into little bagels. Okay, so I'm going to divide my dough into 4 portions. So this recipe will make you 4 medium-sized bagels. But if you like them larger, you can just divide them in 3. It's up to you. So I'm going to just quarter it. And the dough is lovely and moist. Okay, and with each portion, I'm going to just roll them into a dough ball. And as you roll it, you kind of want to pack it in so you don't get like large air pocket and it's all nice and evenly distributed. And then I'm going to just gently press it down like that. And then use your thumb and then press into the center. And then we're going to create this nice bagel or donut shape, whatever you call it, and flip it the other side. Just shape it nicely. And you can make the hole a little bit bigger if you want. So when you bake the bagels, it will expand a little bit, but not much. So this is pretty much the size of bagel you get. And you can decide how big you want your bagels just based on the size of the dough. Okay, so that's number 1. It's so cute. And then I'm going to just continue and make the rest of the 3. Roll into a ball, press it down, and then use your thumb, press into the middle. And then you can create this ring shape. Make sure you do the other side as well. There's so much fun to do. Okay, so that's my bagels ready here. And now we're going to boil them. Okay, so what I've got here is a big pot of boiling water. And what we're going to do is to boil the bagel dough. And I'm going to just pop in my dough in the pot. Can you still see that? Okay, I'm going to pop in all my bagels in there. So in the beginning, they're going to sink to the bottom of the pot. And don't disturb them. Just allow them to cook and wait for them to float to the surface. And you want a big pot of water because some of the flour will get dissolved into the water and kind of thicken it. So if you don't have sufficient amount of water, it's going to get really gooey really quickly. So as you can see, they're floating to the top. The beautiful dance of bagels. Lovely. So once they float to the top, continue to boil them. I say 2-3 minutes each side should be plenty. So you want to allow them to boil for a couple of minutes and then flip them and then boil further. So that's looking really good. And I'm going to just use 2 spatulas and then just flip them gently. So you would get sort of foamy bits on top. It doesn't matter, just skim it off if you want to. It's just coming from the psyllium husk or maybe the flour. Just skim it off. Lovely, I think it's almost ready. And what I've got here is a chopping board with a couple of sheets of kitchen towels, and we're going to scoop up the bagels and then drain them on the kitchen towel. Okay, so I've turned the heat off. I'm going to gently scoop them up. Be nice and gentle. Just make sure you drain up the water and place them on the kitchen towel. Great, so just allow them to drain on the kitchen towel and dry off a little bit, and we're going to get them ready for baking. Okay, so here's my boiled bagels here, and they have been left to drain for a little bit, so the surface should be quite dry. They look kind of crinkly or bumpy right now, but once they're baked, they'll become lovely and smooth and plump. So have faith. And now we're going to put on some toppings. So first of all, I'm going to coat them with a layer of oil. I'm using olive oil here. You just generously brush the surface with the olive oil, and including the center as well. Just make sure they're fully coated. This will give them a lot of flavors and also beautiful golden brown surface. And then we're just going to flip them around and coat the other side. And same way, brush the oil here. So I've got 4 bagels here, so I'm going to coat 2 of them with each toppings. So here's my poppy seeds. I love poppy seeds. So just sprinkle a generous amount of poppy seeds on top. And just give it a gentle press on top. Just make sure they stick. And then my white sesame, toasted sesames. I mean, you can use seeds, herbs, whatever you want. It's up to you. These 2 are my favorite bagel toppings. Okay, again, press it down a little bit. And then we're going to transfer them onto a baking tray. So I've got my baking tray here. It's lined with a layer of baking sheets. And on top, I brushed some olive oil to grease the surface. And then I'm going to just pop my bagels onto the baking tray. They look so good. Beautiful. I mean, this is such a fun recipe to do. And now they're ready to go into the oven. So these bagels are ready to go into the oven. So I'm going to preheat my oven to 180 degrees. And I'm going to bake them for about 30 to 35 minutes. Depends on the oven. And one tip about the oven is to place the baking tray either in the middle or slightly above. So this will prevent the base of the bagels being baked too quickly. So just bear that in mind. So there you go. This is how you make the best keto vegan bagels. I mean, my kitchen is permeated with a beautiful bread aroma, and that's one of the most satisfying part of bread making. So let's dig in. I'm going to go for the poppy seeds. I love poppy seeds. So let's have a look. So once you bake them, you want to leave them to cool for a few minutes before you eat them. Keto vegan dough simply needs some time to kind of settle. So here we go. And here's the money shot. Look at that. Look at the beautiful texture. Oh, so good. Let's take a bite. So look at this. So beautiful. So it's firm. The texture is firm, but it's got bounciness to it. And it's just so beautiful. There you go. Let's take a bite. I love poppy seeds. I love eating it plain like this, so I tend to add a bit more salt to it. But it's just so good. I can't recommend this recipe enough. No, just amazing bread. With these bagels, you can add all sorts of flavors to it, herbs, spices, seeds, whatever you want. And those are toppings as well. You can use nuts, anything. And also with fillings, I mean, all of you probably have your favorite bagel fillings in mind. So there's all sorts of things you can do. So as I said, the key of this bread is really the combination of liquid and kneading. So you simply need to be patient and spend some time kneading the dough. And I promise you, it's worth it. So I hope you liked today's recipe or give it a go. These bagels are a must in your life. Your breakfast and lunch will never be the same. So definitely give it a go. So follow me on Instagram if you haven't already. I post the food I eat and also recipes from this channel. So make sure you check out my Instagram and also check out my Amazon shops. I normally add ingredients for the most recent recipes on the top just for your convenience. So if you ever wonder about the ingredients or equipment that I use for my recipe, you can find them on my Amazon shops. So thank you for hanging out with me today and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.